So I would like to welcome everyone to the event today. We have an exceptional panelist of guests here. This is the Women at the Top, the Rise and Reverence webinar event sponsored by Caprock. We are a multifamily investment advisory firm. My name is Jennifer Couch. I'm a director here at Caprock, and it's my pleasure to serve as the moderator for today's discussion with these three amazing women business leaders. With an increase of women leaders, we have experienced phenomenal success and change, and I know we're all very excited to learn from our guests today. Before we get started, I just wanted to share a few logistical aspects. First, we are recording this session and we'll make it available to on our website after the event is done. If you have any questions throughout the event, please use the Q&A button. It should be right at the bottom of your screen, and our team will be monitoring this and responding as time allows. If we run out of time, you can always reach out to us after the event. Since this is a panel discussion, you may want to adjust your view to a gallery appearance. You can do this by clicking the view button at the top of your screen. It's in the top right corner, and selecting gallery view. This will allow you to see kind of the guests as we go through the discussion here. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our three incredible panelists. Starting with Jessica Rolph. She is the co-founder and CEO of Lovevery, a phenomenal company offering products and information which help create developmental experiences in the lives of babies and families. Jessica also co-founded the Climate Collaborative, a nonprofit organization helping companies in the natural products industry take meaningful steps to reverse climate change. She is an Aspen Institute Henry Crown Fellow and was awarded the Park Leadership Fellowship graduating from Cornell's Johnson School. Jessica holds a BA from Cornell University, where she graduated cum laude, and Jessica and her husband Decker live here in Boise, Idaho, and are parents to Beatrice, Thatcher, and Leland. Next up, we have Errin Green, who is majority owner and CEO of RER Solutions Incorporated, a professional service firm that provides support to several U.S. federal departments and agencies, including the Department of Energy, Small Business Administration, and the Army. Over the past 11 years, Errin has repositioned and led the company through a substantial period of growth. Prior to acquiring her ownership in RER, Errin was an associate partner in Gallup's government practices. She began her career as a consultant with McKinsey & Company, providing management consulting services to multiple Fortune 500 companies on a variety of topics, including strategic planning, organizational effectiveness, and branding. Errin graduated magna cum laude from Harvard College with a bachelor's degree in biology. She received her master's in business administration with distinction from Harvard Business School. And last but certainly not least, Elizabeth Littlefield, who is a senior partner at West Africa Blue. Elizabeth has led organizations in emerging markets development finance for the past 3 decades, with a focus on sustainability, renewable resources, and economic empowerment. In her role at West Africa Blue, she chairs the board of MCOPA, the pioneer in pay-as-you-solar in Africa, and treasurer of World Wildlife Fund for the U.S. Just last month, she was selected as Reuters one of the world's 25 trailblazing women leading the fight against climate change. Congratulations. She was also appointed by President Obama as the president, CEO, and chair of OPIC, now renamed DFC, where she served from 2010 to 2017. She was an adjunct professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies and is a graduate of Brown University. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We received some questions ahead of this when you were registering for today's event, and we've incorporated these into our discussion. But I thought to kick us off, I would love to have our panelists share a bit about what motivated them to start in their business or organizations that you're a part of. Errin, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you for having me here today. So I moved down to the DC area from Boston in 2002. And when I arrived in the DMV, as we call it, I was really struck by how many successful female and minority entrepreneurs there seemed to be in the DC area versus, where I lived previously in Boston. I eventually came to realize that a lot of them were involved in the federal contracting space. I ended up taking a job with RER Solutions, the company that I now run, who also happened to be a federal contractor. And again, as I learned more about the industry, I came to believe that there were tremendous opportunities for folks with any entrepreneurial inclination. And while it took me about 10 years to embark upon this journey with RER as its leader, I stayed in federal contracting. And to this day, that's what we do. We're federal contractors. I don't do any commercial work. I don't do any state and local work. I continue to believe that contracting offers significant opportunities for women and minorities who have an interest in being a business owner. So that's my story.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Errin. Elizabeth, how about you? I think you might be on mute.
You'd think I would have learned that by now. Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And it's great to be on this call with you, Errin and Jessica. So I guess my journey started when I left college and was absolutely terrified of becoming a banker. But that seemed like a good path for someone that didn't know what they wanted to do at the time. So I got involved in that Meals on Wheels program in Harlem. And that kind of, in a way, led to a lifelong engagement with microfinance, which was kind of interwoven with my career in emerging markets at JP Morgan for, nearly 20 years. And it kind of kept me grounded and sort of connected to the realities of developing countries and poverty while working, on the trading floor. I also spent 2 years living in West Africa on a leave of absence from JP Morgan, building microfinance institutions from scratch, which was amazing. It was pre-cell phone, pre-paved roads. So it was kind of an incredible experience. And that led to my work at the World Bank, kind of helping to professionalize and grow and commercialize the microfinance industry. And then, much to my surprise, that led to my being appointed by President Obama to lead OPIC, as you mentioned, now the Development Finance Corporation, which is, was at the time, we had about a $30 billion portfolio of crazy risky investments that nobody else would make in developing countries, and a mandate to be profitable at the same time, and all of that answering to Congress. So never in a million years thought I would ever work for the US government, but that's what I did for a while. So then after the elections in 2017, I kind of started heading back to my roots and really focusing on nature and climate, which has really been my passion all along. And now find myself back in West Africa, helping me and my partners build what's going to be a big mangrove restoration and protection project that hopefully will generate carbon credits that will pay for the activities and funnel money back into those communities. So kind of a fun bookend to a long career. So thanks. All starting with fear of being banker.
Fear to world renown. I love it. And Jessica, how about you?
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. I mean, in company like Elizabeth and Errin, thank you so much for having me. I think that my query around what I wanted to become and how I wanted to make meaning in my life began with this question: do I want to work in nonprofits? Do I want to work in the government sector, or do I want to work in business? And I remember being in college and seeing all these people that I thought I related to. We were sleeping in cardboard boxes, protesting this or that. And then they started filing into the business world. And I felt kind of betrayed. I was like, wait, I thought that we were creating a life of meaning. How can there be meaning in business? And so spent my 20s really in a journey to discover, after working in government. I worked for the FTC, after working in nonprofit. I worked for an environmental initiative. Then discovering that I love the pace of business, and that there was this new emergence and popularization of these people who were combining business with purpose. This was 25 years ago. There was Anita Roddick, and there was Seth Goldman and Stonyfield Farms, and all these food companies and businesses that were built on a mission. And so my husband, now husband, but kind of partner at the time, and I dreamed of creating a company that fed profits to a nonprofit, that where it was a for-profit enterprise that would feed a nonprofit. That didn't work out. Stayed persistent, and then ended up co-founding a company called Happy Family. And we built from scratch a business that became the #1 leader in organic baby food. Through all sorts of trials and tribulations, we pulled it off. We built a company from scratch, sold that company to Groupe Danone, and in that time grew the organic market from only 3% of all baby food consumed was organic. We started the company to now over 40% of food is organic, and Happy Family is the leading brand. Then had this experience where I was so committed to early life, had my own children, and was like, wait a minute, what's happening with their learning? I feel like I've optimized their food, but what's happening with all these plastic flashing lights toys that are coming in and out? And isn't this early stage of life important? And found myself asking these questions, and had this personal experience where I discovered a very nerdy doctoral thesis written on infant brain development. And it changed everything for me. I got rid of all the toys. I started doing all these nerdy activities, making my own learning toys, and dreaming of creating a program around early learning. And so Lovevery is now, we have 330,000 customers globally, over 200 million in revenue. And we built a company really around this purpose of bringing purpose to early life. That's been my journey.
That's wonderful.
And in between, created the Climate Collaborative out of some guilt around packaged foods and waste and all the packaging that was going into landfill. So felt like I needed to do something for climate too. I've always been very admiring of the people who are dedicating, like Elizabeth, dedicating their lives to climate.
That's great. It sounds like each of you, what I love and what I hear a lot is that it's like it started out with kind of like this unknown, but starting with some sort of passion that was true to you and what you believed in and how you wanted to come into the world with a really strong purpose, if you will. So as successful female leaders, what misconceptions and maybe obstacles have you encountered on your path to success? And how have you managed this journey?
Well, I'm happy to jump in here.
That'd be great.
I think, I guess I got started a bit earlier than Errin and Jessica, but I would say those early years, there weren't any role models really. The word, political correctness was not even a concept, much less a term. And so I think, there was a point at which I was the only female trader on a trading floor of 700 people, which, but bizarrely through all this, I never really felt that being female was an obstacle. Maybe I was just completely oblivious to what was going on around me. But I did feel that later on, certainly in my subsequent roles in the last sort of 15 years or so, that one of the challenges I found that really surprised me is that if you are, which I think Errin and Jessica certainly are, and you are too, probably Jennifer, if you are kind of a warm and inclusive personality and a warm and inclusive leader, people get very confused when you're also exacting. And I feel like men get away with being warm and friendly, but then also tough. But somehow when women are warm and friendly and then tough, it feels like a betrayal, particularly for men. And I didn't expect that at all. And I'll be curious to know if Errin and Jessica have had that experience too, of the fact that people expect men to have a style that can encompass being exacting or tough, whereas women, if they telegraph anything else, kind of aren't expected to have that aspect of their personality. Anyway, that's the one thing I would mention.
Great. Jessica, anything?
I think that's so interesting, Elizabeth. I want to hear from Errin. Errin, are you willing to go next?
Sure, I would say I don't know that I've experienced exactly that. My challenge, I think, has been potentially partially self-imposed. I think that I have early on lacked some of the confidence in my leadership abilities. And I think the consequence of that was that rather than asserting myself in instances where it probably would have been appropriate to do so, because the direction that I was attempting to lead the company in was the right direction. I deferred some difficult decisions, and I allowed folks to overly influence decisions because I was afraid that I would make a mistake and expected them to be in a better position to be right than myself. It's like, I'm young, they've been in this industry for a while, they must be right, I can't be right. And I think in time, as some of the decisions that I made kind of proved out, I gained the confidence to kind of step into my leadership style and be more assertive in those cases where I needed to be. But I do still think I tend to lean warm and fuzzy, and am not always as assertive as I should be. I mean, I'm the leader of my company, and there are cases where, what I say needs to go, but that hasn't always been the case over the course of the past 10 years. So those were my thoughts.
Yeah, I think what Errin and Elizabeth both are touching on are so interesting and relevant for me. So I'm reflecting on myself too, and thinking about that edge between if you personality type me, I don't really look like the hard driving CEO type, but I can be so fastidious about quality and really have to be very direct about it. And then I also like to give really positive feedback when it's there. And so I think that tension is something I'm exploring. So Elizabeth, thank you for bringing that up. And then Errin, I think believing in yourself and being able to say early that there's no silver bullet. There's nothing out there that is this big unknown that everybody else knows, that you're not in the club. And it's just this intelligence and this honoring of this unknown that I think I've had to shed over the years of building my company. I will say there are so many women, and I think the women here representing this panel and so many that are in this community have faced challenges that I haven't faced, because my business has been always very aligned with the female. So I'm making baby food. I'm caring about climate. I am making baby toys. And so my only challenge has been to get respect for the business, the real business outcomes that we're delivering. But I think that it's always been kind of an alignment. And so I haven't had to, I'm not in biotech. I haven't had to be at McKinsey and prove myself. I haven't, built out, worked with governments and in the same ways that these other panelists have. So
that's great. I think we can all be humbled by each other sometimes in that. And you bring up an interesting concept there. I think we all have this, whether it be our own self-doubt or perception or challenges that we may come across, and that can be pretty much anybody as a leader for sure. But I'm curious, do you guys, when you think about your network of people or other professionals that are in your industry, maybe if it's not common to female, or maybe it's other females that you're trying to connect with, it seems like there's this opportunity for women-focused groups or mentors and support. Do you guys have any groups in particular that you work with or recommend to others, whether you're a female attendee here at today's event that's looking to get there, or perhaps you have people near you that it would be good for them to know as well?
I think that's a great question, because I have often thought, and you kind of read books about how people get to realize their full potential and what they want, and like, how do they get what they want in life? And so much of it is about really being thoughtful about your networks as you're evolving your career over time. And that's something that's very current for me. It remains current. It's not something that you build and then you're done, but there are people and communities and insight and inspiration that you can find throughout your evolution as a person. And so I would say some of the groups and communities that have been really powerful for me have been Aspen Fellowship. So the Henry Crown Fellowship community was very important for me in navigating the sale of my first company, some difficult personal circumstances related to transitioning to having a big boss at Group Danone and feeling insecure about my position and the earnout and feeling not great about that. Even though the financial outcome was so great, I had a lot of feelings that I was able to process with this intimate group. To the YPO community is now I'm involved with the YPO community because I envision taking Lovevery public, and there are other public company CEOs in this group that male, female, across the board, purpose-driven companies, tech companies, all the mix. And I'm learning so much from that community. And then there are so many more that kind of more like informal communities that I've turned to, but I think being very strategic about building a network from the very beginning of who is doing what I want to do. How do I reach out and learn from that community? And then how do I be authentic and really real with my feelings about what this looks like instead of kind of transactional and business oriented? How can I be really real about the insecurities, the personal impacts to marriage, to children, to family, to all the things, and be a whole person in that community? I think it can really help you achieve your dreams and have a meaningful career in life.
It's great. Anybody else have any thoughts on groups or that have been helpful for them?
I would just say, if I could do it again, I would definitely do a better job at developing a network, or many have said to develop your own like kitchen cabinet. But I never really did invest in it because maybe I did accidentally, but I always felt it was something that, the reason you have a great Rolodex is because you don't use it. And so you don't really, I was uncomfortable asking things of people. So that was probably a mistake. And I'd love to have felt that I had done that better in the course of my career. So I'm excited to hear, Jessica, that the Aspen Group and so many others have been a fruitful investment of time. As long as you bring, as you said, your entire self and your authentic self to those settings.
Well, there's so many people here in the Caprock community that care about climate, and I would love to be in connection with you as a leader in climate and doing that work. So let's leverage Caprock to create some community around investing in climate and caring about climate and in our futures.
Amen.
Great. And maybe kind of tying off of that. So one of the things that I noticed, and I think a lot of people talk about, how do you balance your personal and your professional life? But each of you have done a bit more in my mind as I think we become, more successful and we, are moving up within our professional life. There may be this transition of feeling like, giving back or doing something that speaks to your values and what you want to invest in. And there's so many wonderful organizations out there and so many people that are doing really great things in the world. And I'm sure each of you are probably called upon often by different groups to, whether it be sponsor or support, or, whether that be financially or through your time. I'm curious, how do you approach determining where you spend your time and which organizations are the best fit?
I guess I will kick this one off. I'll say that community service for me has always been something that's important. I don't know that I have the same kind of purposeful alignment that Jessica has with her, business life. So I've found kind of purpose and meaning in some of the community service activities that I've been involved with over the years. And I think just the nature of the way that I'm able to support those organizations has evolved over time. So each year I try to find a couple of organizations that offer some sort of meaningful mission and provide either support through time or charitable contributions. There have been periods I served on the board of directors for a nonprofit called Mary Center in DC. And that was a 6-year term, and it was a huge time commitment. And thankfully, I had gotten through some of the worst parts of the entrepreneurial journey and was able to make that time. But now that I'm not a member of the board, I still find other ways to contribute. So I would say for me, there's never enough time in the day. And there's always a trade-off. And, I just try to make myself available in whatever way that I can, given some of my competing professional priorities.
Well, I guess I would jump in and just say, I think learning to say no has been a big challenge for me my whole life, and never more so than in this phase of my career where I somehow find myself on 7 boards and also responsible for a startup company in West Africa in a difficult market, in a difficult place. So I feel like if I, one thing I wish I had done better recently is learn to say no and really have a clear litmus test about things that people ask you to do, and finding ways to say no in a way that feels loving and sincere and true to yourself. So I clearly haven't done a great job at that either. So, but I'm working on it, because you can't have a full-time job and also 6 or 7 boards at the same time. All of this is purpose driven though. So, I think the core career has always been around that. I guess when you ask about balance, Jennifer, I go to also the unique challenges that women leaders have in balancing family life and professional life, which we've all talked for many years about. And, one of the things that struck me is it was not until I had children at home that I realized that the guy who wanted to leave at 5 o'clock or 4:45 to go to a soccer game wasn't a slacker. He was just a parent. And I swear, in a way, I kind of feel like people shouldn't be allowed to manage people that have young children unless they've had some of their own. Because I know that my entire organization celebrated the minute I had children at home, and therefore was going to have a lot more empathy for young parents than I had before. So that's one balance that I think we still need to bridge that gap between people that don't get it and people that do, in terms of what it's, or to have an elderly parent at home. So that's where that need for balance comes up again.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, Elizabeth, because I feel like this is really dorky, but my mom has a mantra that she created for me when I was in my 20s. And it says, focus, eliminate, and say no to parties and friends. Because she was like, you're doing too much, you need to focus. And I really have discovered the joy of focus. And I'm not on any other boards. I'm not on any community. I'm really focused on the primary roles in my life. And I think elevating my role as wife and really figuring out how I can be a good partner to my husband, Decker. I'm a very dedicated daughter. And so my parents are still alive, and I feel so grateful for my relationship with them. And they're also divorced. And so there's 2 different families to be thinking about. But that role, I feel a lot of duty and honor to be a daughter, and I'm taking that seriously. And then, of course, mother. I have 3 children, and then my role as CEO. So I have learned the joy of focus, and I would say that one of the things that I've talked about before, but it's hard to have friendship, I think, and like meaningful friendship and community in this chapter of my life at this stage, because I feel like the kids are going to be out the door in a decade. I've got I'm in the peak of my career. I want to do the impossible and build a lasting, iconic brand in service to early childhood that's, around for many decades and more. And then I also want to be, really savoring the moments that I have with my parents, and then also be a wife and a good partner to somebody who's married to a CEO, which can be, and a founder who's very passionate about our work. So I think, even though I'm saying no to a lot of outside work, I'm still feeling very stretched and finding, meaning in moments of kind of purpose and all of that can be hard some days. I feel like I'm just on a race to just wake up, get the kids, try to be present with the kids, try and, do everything I can to squeeze out the most meaning out of my work day. And then, talk to my mom and my dad on the way home. And then, it's just all of it can be a lot at this stage.
Yeah, I think that's I think probably everybody can sympathize. I'll speak on behalf of attendees as well. I know that I have felt that, especially when you have. I love that you pointed out parents as well as children. As I think we hit a certain point in our life, and it's the stretch between the two, right? That there's a lot more, and sometimes it tends to hit all at once.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. Are there things that you do that help you find like some serenity? I mean, it sounds like you are all going in so many different directions. Is there anything like that you found to give yourself a moment, right? Like just to have that time to reflect on you and what you need and how you're feeling in that moment?
One thing is I have older children, so 7, 10, and 12, and I love reading to my children. They can read, of course, but we get in bed and we read together, and I look forward to reading these novels. I pick really good ones. With my son, we're about to start the Secret Garden, and I love reading to my children, and I think people miss that. And it's so important in early childhood to continue to read to your children, and I love that. I'm also now finding myself really looking forward to those snuggles. I go from reading to my daughter to my husband hands off and he does his cuddle time and puts her to bed. And then I move to my next child. And then my final child, my oldest, wants to just read Garfield. So we read Garfield and laugh in bed. But that hour span is probably the most nurturing I've found in the day.
It's wonderful. Errin, Elizabeth, anything you found that's good as kind of for your own personal?
Errin, after you.
Thanks a lot for kicking it my way. I get a lot of comfort and peace being physically active. So every morning I get up very early and I spend at least an hour just engaging in some form of physical activity. And I feel like I get most of my best ideas have come during that time. It's usually just me and the birds that are up at that time. So that's what I tend to do.
Yeah, I would say different phases of my life, I've had combinations of what Jessica and Errin have just said too. So, and right now I'm just trying to prioritize non-professional things as seriously as I'm prioritizing professional ones to make room for that. And ironically, I think, Jessica, you'll find once the kids have left home, suddenly your friends haven't disappeared. They're just sort of they've gone into remission. Because what I'm finding is that those friendships, especially the female friendships, suddenly surge up on the priority list later on. So I wouldn't worry; they're still there.
That is so comforting.
Probably feeling the same thing as you right now. All right, so switching gears a little bit. So each of you, and I know this is a term that's been used loosely, but I consider each of you entrepreneurs in your own unique way, whether it's starting a business or, like I said, like leading, Elizabeth, all the work that you've done to lead so much change around the world, and the organizations that are so important to you. Everybody, I think, realizes that the last few years have been really turbulent and created a lot of change and challenge for us. I'm curious if you guys, what you've done to remain innovative in your approach and staying successful, or maybe even it's just, maybe we don't define it as success, but staying the course. Do you guys have any insights, thoughts, learnings, or things that you might share to help our viewers get a bit of information from you on that?
I mean, I have a pretty quick answer that comes to mind right away. And that is, I love co-creating with our customers. So learning, we're not only this kind of top-down organization, but we are literally making products with our customers. So I had a story of a customer, a couple stories, one quickly, because I want to make sure Errin and Elizabeth have time. But we had a customer who came to us and she said, I love your products and I don't see my child represented in your books. We make our own children's books, all photography based, little stories about children skinning their knee or whatever it is. And her daughter has a limb difference. And so she sent me this picture of her daughter playing with our puzzle and with her prosthetic leg. And she was like, I'd love to do a book with you. And so we flew down to Arizona and we created this darling book, Alora Makes a New Friend. And it's really about her sharing openly about her disability, this little girl, but it's also about, of course, the whole person. And I think that the education that we can do for children of giving them a window into another culture, another life, another experience, and then also reflecting positively with these wonderful images back to them for children to experience that reflection back of themselves is one of the most powerful work we do.
Love that.
That's great. What was it called? I think I can.
Alora Makes a New Friend. I'll find it while you guys are doing.
Alora Makes a New Friend. I like it. I can think of some folks that could use that.
It's adorable. It comes as a part of our program. It's a very, very sweet book.
Right.
And Elizabeth, I can imagine with between COVID and just, the turbulent market too, that the work that you are doing has probably had its own set of challenges depending upon where in the world you are at. Because I know, although it's been challenging here in the US, other countries have definitely experienced different levels of that. What have you done to kind of like just stay the course and being innovative and flexible in that?
Well, I guess I would say that so 2017 was a bit abrupt for me because I tend to be deeply invested in an organization, and I had spent 7 years really building the OPIC, the DFC into something I was very, very deeply connected to. And I also, I tend to love building an institution and making all of the parts kind of connect and happy and efficient and making the whole thing like a globe sort of hum and spin and sing. And so I was in the middle of doing that, and then the election results sort of surprised me. And so it took me a lot longer to get my feet again after that. And I had always assumed that I would take on another, large institutional executive role. But I really wanted to do it focusing on nature and on particular biodiversity, because I believe, and Jessica, you may follow this thought too, is that we have a twin crisis right now. It's climate and biodiversity, and yet they're both equally existentially important, but biodiversity is far less reversible and equally critical. So that's what I wanted to focus my energies on. And then I started realizing, actually, I don't really need a big CEO role anymore. I think it may be my ego saying that I want one, not my heart. And I, like Errin, you mentioned earlier how you've struggled with letting yourself get talked out of things, or letting your head override your instincts on things. And I had a feeling that that's what was happening to me, is everyone was telling me I had to go for another big job. And so I was going to go for another big job. And then COVID hit. In a way, it was a blessing, because not only do we spend a lot of time with our children, but also I kind of realized I don't really want that anymore. That I could actually fulfill my needs and make the bigger contribution by having a kind of a portfolio and contributing to a variety of things. And then, of course, the opportunity to build something from scratch that was exciting for me, because I'd spent the sort of first part of my career focusing on poverty and people, and then the latter years on climate and nature. And we identified something in West Africa that is unbelievably powerful for communities. It's the only way they'll ever get revenues, and for biodiversity and for the climate, all at the same time. And so I'm like, let's do that. Let's build that from scratch. And unlike, Errin and Jessica, I'd never built a company from scratch, like literally starting with zero. And so that felt like, and in a virtual team, which is spread all over the world, mainly in Africa. So it felt like COVID enabled me on this journey to go from what I thought I wanted, which I think was my ego and need for relevance speaking, rather than what was really in my heart. And so now I've found that I'm building this thing. It may seem crazy, but it's going to work, and it'll have a big impact. And so and it's something I can do from while never taking off the yoga socks, yoga pants and the socks, which I've become kind of hooked on.
Errin, any thoughts from you? I can imagine, given your industry too, and the customers that you support, how have you guys remained innovative and staying that course at RER?
One of the good things and bad things about working with the government is that things are pretty well insulated from the markets, and there's not a whole lot of volatility. COVID was one of the few exceptions to that. So I think the government, which typically works pretty slow and is not very innovative, was forced to figure out how to transform and operate in a very different manner than it traditionally had in the past. And our business, just given the nature of how we work alongside the government, was also forced into a position of having to adapt fairly quickly when COVID hit. So we went from, things being pretty quiet and slow to a very intense period for 2 years as we supported a very large effort with the Small Business Administration that was probably one of the most impactful pieces of work that we engaged with, but also probably the most stressful time that I've ever had with RER. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things that I was thinking about in starting organizations and growing them is just knowing who to bring on, and where to invest those resources, and whether it's trying to invest in your products or your service, or in some ways it's just bringing on the right people. What is your approach to that? Like, how do you, if nothing else, from a financial and people management perspective of what these organizations that you've been a part of, do you have any advice for our viewers of how they might think about that? As I'm assuming we still got a bit of a journey, and things always change, right? It's life. So what are some things that you guys have implemented or used as a reference or a guide?
For me, it's been the power of partnership. So I have not created these companies by myself. I did not create the Climate Collaborative, Happy Family, Lovevery by myself. It's been a partnership in every case. And I really believe in that primary relationship and nurturing that relationship and making sure it's as healthy as possible, and also navigating some of the hard parts about it, and just persevering, because ultimately for me, I think the power of building something with someone else from scratch, from the very beginning, overwhelms any challenges that you might have in navigating what that, how that relationship evolves over time. So I'm so grateful with Lovevery to be co-founding Lovevery with Rod Morris. He is exceptional business leader, purpose-driven, mission-driven, and also very, very effective. He took his last company. He was on the founding team he was on the team that took his last company public, and was very excited to be on the founding team at Lovevery. And so he's also my best friend's husband. And so we've had, really at this point, decades of trust. And we've known each other for so long. So I just feel so grateful because it brings so much meaning to the everyday. I don't feel alone in it. And we try and have fun with it too. Joke around a little bit, just make the hard times a little bit better.
That's great. Errin, what have you guys done? I mean, yours is pretty steady, as you mentioned, it sounds like, with the contracts that you have, but when you're considering, kind of resources and financial and where to invest and how to continue to grow or maintain the course, is there things that you're doing or your team is doing to keep that going?
I think one of the things that was fortunate about my situation is that I wasn't building from scratch. I actually acquired an interest in an existing business. So I was fortunate enough to step into a situation where a lot of the back office support, so accounting, HR, IT resources were already in place. Like Jessica, I also have a partner, so I don't think I could have done it alone. So that was very helpful as we, kind of stabilize the business and look to grow. One of the most critical types of new resources that we needed to bring on were, I think, folks who could help with business development. So that's where I've focused my energy and time, and it's not easy. In this space, there are a lot of people who can promise to bring work, but most of them are not very effective at doing it. So figuring out how to kind of weed through the promises to people who can actually be effective has been a challenge. And, I think we've just found through trial and error that for at least my business, the most effective way to get good business development people or to find people who are good at managing contracts and kind of developing them to also take on the business development role and use them in that way as well.
Great. Anything on your end, Elizabeth, as you've been starting up West Africa Blue and the team?
I would say all along, it's just, for me, it sounds obvious, but making sure that you're recruiting people that don't think like you and that make you a little bit uncomfortable, because I do believe in having that yin and yang. And I know I've really, really benefited from having somebody who's quite different from me as a partner. I mean, I know it's old fashioned, but I still love the Myers-Briggs, and I've used it to construct teams now for many years. So much so that even at OPIC, when we were putting together a team of incoming folks, when I started there and we did a group thing, I realized we were lacking in one personality type, the closer, in fact, as it turns out, because a lot of big thinkers and excited people, but not a lot of execution folks. And so we deliberately went out looking for those kind of people. So I think, recruiting people that don't think like you, but share your values and your integrity and all of that is really important. And also, I think over people's careers, they tend to, at least I have shifted from liking being the external role to kind of being more interested and better at the internal role and the nurturing of an entire organization rather than the limelight. And I think having someone that can go with you on that journey and take, that role which you're leaving behind, because it's, as you both know, it's really hard to play both roles at the same time, the external and the internal one. So, but I think the number one thing is making sure you're hiring people that really recognizing your where you need more help than others might, and focusing on filling that gap with a partner that can do that role.
Fantastic. It sounds like all of you have been very fortunate to find some people that share your vision. And I know that in my time, it's always been about who you surround yourself with as well. If people at the core of everything are part of that success. So we have about 10 minutes. So what I thought we could do is launch another quick poll here for our attendees. And then I would love to hear the panelists' thoughts. So if you could tell us, which of the following qualities do you think is most important for a successful female business leader? And this one is a pick one. So there's resilience, creativity, perseverance, risk-taking, and adaptability. I'll give it a couple of minutes for people to weigh in here. It's bouncing back and forth, looks like, between resilience and perseverance. Looks like most people are finishing up here. All right, it looks like perseverance, barely edging out resilience, but a close second. And then creativity, risk-taking, and adaptability are all right in there. So we'll close the poll. And I would love to hear from each of our panelists which one they feel like is most important. And maybe it's one that I don't have in here too. We'll give you guys the option of answering whichever one you want. And let's see, Jessica, do you want to kick us off?
Ooh, I was gonna kick it to Errin.
Oh, you were.
I wanted to hear from Errin first, but okay, I'll go. I'm totally with the unanimous. We're with the majority vote of perseverance. I think everything else rolls up to perseverance. I think it's core. It's so essential, and it's something that we're constantly recreating in ourselves every day we wake up. And I had somebody, I've been working on some work with Lovevery to try and expand access of Lovevery to families who currently don't have access in communities that are more marked as vulnerable. And I had somebody met this really amazing woman from Stanford, and I was just at this conference. I was really just trying to put this thing together, and she was like, I'm gonna be straight talk to you, because that's what I'm gonna give you this gift of straight talk. This plan that you have is not gonna work, and you're not gonna be successful. I was like, game on. I was like, that's exactly what I need to hear. It ignites something in you, right? And you're just like, you're told you can't do it. I am going to do it. And obviously I need to pivot in how I'm going to get it done. But I love, just finding that in yourself, that perseverance. And I think it comes from, just a deep purpose and a caring about what you're doing. There's got to be meaning behind what you're persevering for. But that would be my vote too.
So in an effort not to be repetitive, I think I would agree with perseverance, but a close second I would say is resilience. One of the things that I've learned is being a leader is hard, and running a business, you'll experience a ton of failure. I was not comfortable with failure early on, and learning to bounce back from that failure and continuing to move forward has been kind of critical to my learning and growing as a leader. So I will say I agree with perseverance, but I would like to throw in a couple of votes for resilience as well.
I would just double click on Errin. I mean, being a double Harvard and McKinsey, like to start off your career, I mean, I couldn't do those things. So I had to learn early, like Harvard's not going to accept me, nor is Stanford, nor is the other, the other top schools, nor is Brown, Elizabeth. And then, McKinsey, there's no way I could pass those tests to get into McKinsey, pass even the beginning hurdles of what they require. So I think it's also interesting to kind of know that there's value in maybe not achieving early and finding that, just like look at the bright side. You may not be able to get what you want, but actually you can turn it into something, even more meaningful for yourself, if you get rejected or if you don't make it. So anyway, you were too successful in the beginning.
Elizabeth, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't better what Jessica and Errin have said. So I guess I would break the rules and choose a completely different word. And that's empathy. Because I do feel like the ability to put yourself in the shoes of others, a coworker, a customer, and a boss, and really, really, really see the world from their shoes, is the most important leadership trait for me of all. And perhaps it's particularly powerful in a circumstance where I've always worked, where there's an innate imbalance between us and developing countries and poor women in marketplaces that I've been spending so many of my life with, and really to see the world from their perspective. And I don't know, I feel like it, without understanding what's happening at home or what pressures they're under, you can't really know where they're at. And I do feel like empathy is like the the root of all understanding of deep relationships and trust. And it's kind of an innately female characteristic. I have to say, if there's anything that would distinguish women leadership from men, and I don't think there necessarily is a monolithic notion there, it's that. So I don't know, for me, that's sort of the heart of everything. It's the heart of what makes a good listener. It's the heart of what makes somebody able to adapt and learn from what they've heard. It's what differentiates being a client-centric person, or like, for example, Jessica, you were saying the stuff you were learning from customers about the book that I'm going to buy. Yeah, that it all starts with being able to get out of yourself and into the shoes of somebody else. So I put that first.
Well, thank you so much. And I think if I'd have had empathy on there, we probably would have got a bunch of votes for that too. So I love that you break the rules, Elizabeth. We all should do that a little more. So with that, that's the end of our time here. I am always amazed at how fast this time goes when we're engaged in such great discussion. Thank you to everyone who was able to join us today, and our panelists, obviously, for their time and insights. Just a quick reminder, this session will be made available on the Caprock site soon, so be on the lookout for that. And thank you again so much, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.